Namaste and welcome to the Wednesday 10 p.m. show. And today we are going to discuss about the world economy. And we have Shri Vijay Sardana with us, and as always, Shri Vibhuti Jha. Welcome, Mr. Sardana. Mr. Sardana is an economist as well as a senior advocate and a business consultant. So many hats within the ring. Vijayji, there is a lot of concern about the global economy going bust, and especially the future of globalization is supposed to be very bleak. Is it a good thing for the globalization to end?
Good evening, first of all, Sanjay ji, Vibhuti ji, and all the viewers of this great show around the world. My namaste to all of you.
All of you. Thank you.
Uh, Sanjay, it's a very interesting question. Let's look back and think about why this whole issue of so-called globalization emerged and what were the drivers for it. And the bigger challenge, if I say that the biggest issue of globalization, or I'll say that achievement was creation of WTO. Because we, after Second World War, we have GATS, then we had a lot of international conventions, lot of agreements, lot of treaties, whole lot of things. And ultimately, there was a convergence of all of them into, if one way or the other, if you look into, it was like overarching focus was on World Trade Organization, which we say is a Dunkel draft agreements, and which were signed, and then all things came into existence from 2000 onwards. Now, if you look back very carefully, why this WTO agreement was signed and what was the criteria or parameters of those agreements, I can bet today, if you renegotiate the same language and same formula and same criteria of WTO agreements, I can bet there will never be a consensus. Why it was able to, or why it was possible at that time? Because please appreciate, at that time there was no internet. The
Okay.
whole because people were having very limited knowledge of what is happening around the world, the calculations, the information, the database, everything was like under the carpet or cooked up by some so-called experts, and it was conversed with a whole bogey of that prosperity and welfare of the human mankind and environment and overall prosperity. The passage or the destination of welfare is via trade. This was the slogan which was sold to all developing and underdeveloped world by Western powers, mainly Europe and America. And why it was done? Because they realized it, that their population is stagnant. They have to continue to harvest the resources. Unless there is something called free trade agreement at a global level, it will be impossible for them to go and talk to every individual country for their trade interest. And after, like typical, Belt and Road agenda of China, that they started signing with a whole lot of country. Now one by one they all are bursting and situation is becoming complex. If there was an internet and if they go one by one to all of them to sell WTO, after 5 years, the rewinding would have started, like today in the case of Belt and Road agenda. Why I'm saying this? Many of your viewers must be thinking that I'm talking something which is illogical or unsubstantiated. Let me tell you that from the year 2000 till 2008, before the Lehman Brothers crisis, I was running a Center for International Trade in agriculture and agro-based industries as a founder director with Honorable, at that time, our Agriculture Minister, Mr. Sharad Pawar, when we signed WTO, but we were not ready as a nation to understand the implications, and industry was far away. Even the bureaucracy was not clear what we had signed. So one of the way was looking at is one side, understand and read these agreements in detail and communicate to different stakeholders of economy, and also do capacity building of policy planners. And when you go into detail of all of them, even today I am teaching in management colleges international trade law and WTO. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if you go into detail, it looks like that we signed an agreement which most of the developing nations and underdeveloped country cannot meet those requirements. And because
Okay.
it was a package deal, either you take all or you leave all. It was not that it is wrong, I will not go with this, but I'll go with that. The fact of the matter is, it was just a rosy picture which was presented, and everybody, fall for it. And the problem was the countries, those who are not having capability, a very interesting line was added in virtually every agreement: technical assistance. That word will help you in building capability. Sir, you know what was the name of technical assistance? The consultants were hired at huge cost by the Western world, WTO, World Bank, IMF. The same Western consultants, those who had no ground level experience of developing world, they were coming, giving lecture, pocketing millions of dollars in the name of consultancy, writing some nice report, which has nothing to do with ground reality, and giving it to them, this is your future destiny, follow this, you will be great. And they went back. In the name of technical assistance, they got those reports, never got any money. So that is what was happening. No investments in infrastructure, no investments in managerial development, no development quality control systems, no capacity building of the institution in these countries. It was just doing seminars, conferences, people were coming, enjoying in five-star, having nice feedback, and charging hefty consulting fee. That was technical assistance. So it was, I can bet today, if people feel what I'm saying is wrong, renegotiate WTO today and see what is going to be the outcome.
Okay, that's a fine challenge that you've thrown, and of course, you were heading a group in agriculture and agro services, and I think one thing that India had done was that it had kept certain buffers, at least in agriculture and agro services. Do those buffers still stand, or what is the status today?
See, we have to appreciate one thing, that one big agenda which was sold to every country was, once you sign WTO, you all will have a access to world market. Most of the country thought exporting means something great and we can export. That was the initial selling proposition. Sir, first of all, for exports, you should have raw material to export. Then you should have a capability to create a product which are sellable in those markets where you have to sell. Now my point is, how many commodities India has which you can export? Think of very carefully. You have 1.4 billion population. You are 70% importer of edible oil. You are shortage in protein. Only thing which you have surplus is carbohydrate, which is wheat, rice and maize, and sugar. The cost of production of all of these things, you have to compete against the hefty subsidy in the Western world. And now the formula is such that because they have taken it, that's what I'm saying, why this is becoming difficult, because the reference year which was taken in WTO was those years when the subsidy was the highest. So if I say I will reduce the subsidy by suppose 50%, your highest, you are only reducing 50%. And I was not giving subsidy, I'm not entitled to give subsidy because reference point is that year. So it was a very cleverly worded, because people, those who were drafting, they knew in advance. It is like a insider trading. You know, I knew how it is going to unfold. So I put all my houses and my subsidy, my policy, my domestic, all those game plan to suit my agenda, because the rest of the world was ignorant. We thought it is a simple, plain game. What WTO says, if you read the preamble, it will create fair and equitable opportunity for everyone by providing free and fair market. Sir, what is free and fair market? Your non-tariff barriers, your subsidies, your whole lot of distortions, your legal requirements, are they free? Point is that, as far as fairness is concerned, then why you are giving subsidy? No, we will give subsidy. And the worst scenario is the game, which I will request all your viewers to think very carefully. We were told we had outdated technology, we have to upgrade the technology so that we can compete in the world market. Sir, the maximum agriculture commodity where you have the maximum technological intervention is cotton, corn, and soybean, where you have maximum technology, whether it is genetic technology, whether it is processing technology, whether it is weather forecasting, disease, you name it. These are the sectors where you have maximum technology intervention. And you know the beauty? These three sectors attract maximum subsidy. It
Okay.
means technology never makes you self-sustaining on commercial terms. If these technologies were so great, why America is giving subsidy to these three sectors? And nobody is answering this question. When I ask this question on any international forum, that if technology is so good, you are adopting best of the technologies in cotton, soybean, and corn, then why your subsidy bill is highest in these three categories? And there is no answer to it.
Okay. I was just asking why, because in WTO they keep pressurizing us to reduce subsidy on and on our agricultural produce, and they also keeps pressurizing us to reduce our export subsidy. And I think we've also lost some cases in the WTO forum on this. So what is that exactly?
See, you're right. That's what I'm saying. We have to look at languages the way it is classified and created. Point is that you can give subsidy up to 10%, de minimis, whatever they call it. Now, idea is that we are talking of a country of India size. If my country is poor and they cannot afford market rate, government of India has to subsidize, whether you call it FCI or PDS or whatever you call it. Food security is prime thing. But mathematically, you are overshooting that limit because it is crossing your 10%. Obviously, when my country is in a country where I have a 30% poverty, I have to feed them. My population is huge, so I have to spend more money to feed my population to maintain my food security buffers. They are saying, no, you are crossing the limit. So what my point is that it means around the world, it was created in such a manner that you are more interested in trade than in the name of welfare and humanity. So you cannot give subsidy. Even if your people are dying with hunger and they cannot afford food, so what? Let them buy at market price. Is it logical? Is it possible? That is one aspect. Second, all these developed countries, their agriculture population of the farmer is hardly 2 to 3 or 4% or 5% of the total population engaged in agriculture. In India, it is 60%. And that too for sustenance agriculture. It is for livelihood. It is not for trade, because land holding is less than a hectare. In that case, if I have to give financial support to them for sustaining, they say, no, you are exceeding the limit. So that is what I'm saying. Today, if you go for renegotiation of agreement on agriculture, I can bet nobody's going to sign it.
Okay, Vibhuti ji.
This is a
Uh,
this is a fascinating subject. I was a student of international economics and international trade in Gokhale Institute in India, where Professor Dandekar and Professor Neil Kantrath taught us this subject matter. So, and somebody who came to the US to market India's liberalization program, I was really enjoying Vijayji's opening statement because he said quite a few very, very important things. One of them is he virtually used my phrase as his words, knowing what we know now. So, technology and communication, because of these two reasons, what we know about WTO, if we sat down to renegotiate it, we'll never have it again. Right, sir? Is that
Correct.
correct? Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, we also know now that these are all the Western tools to impose their will in a language that they write that is not our language. So the rest of the world has to follow English. And English is difficult to follow by rest of the countries. So there you get
it's
caught
difficult
up
to follow even by the
in
Americans and the British
this.
these
You
days.
will lose the cases because we do not know how to fight them. They have imposed their conditions on us according to their thing. But important part here to realize is trade will always happen. Trade will always dominate. The theory of comparative advantage will always play. That will always happen. The question is, to whose advantage does it play to? And today, what we know now, that the multilateral trade organizations, IMF, WTO, and all that crap that is there, we are now realizing that the rest of the world recognizes now that they are the losers in this whole deal. Look at climate change as an example. The way it is being forced upon us is a new globalization tool to control the rest of the world. And that's what is important for us to figure it out. And here is the question. Now we are talking about so many, so many other trade organizations and alliances are being formed. For example, we are living in a multipolar world where there is a concert happening between China, United States, Russia, EU, India. Everybody is trying to pull its own thing. And America is to be blamed for that. Because every single American politician, president down the line, will always talk about we are doing this for America, its exceptionalism, and American people. And I have questioned this philosophy that if you are doing everything for American people, why shouldn't India do for Indians? Why not Chinese do for Chinese? Why not Russia do for Russians? That is what we are looking at. Globalization is changing. Do you think, Vijayji, that climate change is the new tool for control and domination? Eventually, that's the name of the game in international geopolitics.
Absolutely.
Just a minute
Absolutely.
before
Yeah.
before Vijayji responds, may I request the audience to please shoot your questions to Vijayji. We'll be taking the questions at the end of this. Yes, please, Vijayji.
Yeah.
See, if you look at what are the factors of climate change, we look at the greenhouse gases, so-called the pollution, the carbon footprint, and whole lot of things. I'm asking one single point to all your audience and including yourself. Have you ever seen any index, any data where people say which country is doing the highest pollution per capita basis? What we
America,
are
of course.
giving, no, but you will not find any ranking. What they will give you, total country. India is producing so much, China is producing so much, everything is so much. But when it comes to per capita, they will tell you poverty per capita, they will tell you other things in per capita. When it comes to pollution, they will never talk about per capita. Have you ever seen documentation? You will not. Number one. I'll give you another example. We talk about climate change and we talk about water footprint. Use of water is one of the important parameters of climate change. We blame, for example, palm oil. We blame paddy cultivation in India that it is water guzzler. And what is the water guzzling for paddy? 2000 liters for 1 kg of rice, 1600 kgs for 1 liter of palm oil. I'm giving you another interesting example, sir, and find out and do tell me one single NGO or any international forum discussing that. One of the most polluting, it is UN report published in Netherlands. 1 kg of olive oil consumes 13,000 liters of water. One of the most polluting from water footprint point of view is olive oil. You will never hear a single word about olive oil and its impact on environment in any international forum. No NGO is raising this issue. Not a single article on internet that how olive oil is worse than palm oil and paddy. Why? Are we saying that people in the world don't understand comparison? It's very easy to jump and say India is polluting, India is going for sugar cane, India is going for paddy, it is all bad. Stop cultivating so that others can trade and export to India. So we have to understand that the news items, even through the NGOs, even through the so-called environmental NGOs, it is a game. It is a chess game where you have to play very, very carefully. So my request, first of all, when you're talking of climate change, read those parameters very carefully, that what is projected in which unit, whether it is for the country or it is per capita. That will define, because it is very easy to present by saying that India is polluting so much. What America is doing, what rest of the Europe is doing, what China is doing. And in per capita basis, India is much cleaner, number one. Number two, when it comes to recycling, sir, the fact of the matter is, you go to any garbage in India, any garbage dump area, you will not find anything which has a commercial value in garbage area. Everything is recycled. India is the country which is doing maximum recycling, up to 60%. World is talking about 2%, 3%, 5%, maximum 10%. Without law, without legislations, we are already doing 60% recycling. No appreciation for it. It is blamed that we should learn waste management, solid waste management, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to say is that this word is basically pick and choose. People will throw the parameters which suits them, especially Western world, because it is a psychological problem. And I will request all your audiences, please go to YouTube, and I have a video which my presentation in Kuala Lumpur, which is of 32 or 38 minutes, which is on role of environmental NGOs. Just type that, Palm TV, and I have given with facts and figures that how the whole dynamics is manipulated to show that Western world is superior in everything and rest of the world is inferior. And today there is a fight to continue to hit back to on developing economies that you are responsible for poverty, you are responsible for malnutrition. Now the same developing world is also responsible for climate change and pollution. The fact of the matter is, our per capita electricity consumption is one of the least, our coal consumption is one of the least, our petrol consumption is one of the least on per capita basis, and still we are the problem of the reason for the problem of climate change. So what I'm trying to say is that this is a classic way. And another bogey of the whole argument is, please look back into Human Development Index. Read those parameters. All of those parameters of Human Development Index actually leads to climate change problems, because all are energy intensive, all are leading to pollution, all are leading to creating of greenhouse gases. Still, you are talking of that those countries in Human Development Index which are on higher side, they consume maximum energy but still they are not source of the problem. And we are asking rest of the world to ape them, to copy their development model and go for climate, address the climate change by consuming more power, more wasteful energy, more avoidable energy, because that will make you in rank higher. So I think this is a very peculiar scenario. When you put different indexes together, it looks like this is all going like a mockery of the whole system, just because few ideologies and few NGOs supported by donors pushing a certain agenda, so that their dominance in the world politics, in the world diplomacy continues, and rest of the developing economies and developing or underdeveloped economies continue to feel inferior in front of the Western world.
आपने पहले
Yeah.
कहा था, you
Okay.
had said earlier on the
Just
buffer
just
states and the
an
buffer
interesting
states. Right?
statistic. One interesting statistic I have is that beef requires
Yes,
about 15,000
yes,
liters of water per kg of beef,
yes.
and milk requires less than 1,000. And India is mainly milk based, and yet we have people here who are trying to promote beef export. That's one interesting statistic. And the lowest per kg water required is for tea. It's less than 100. Yes, Vibhuti.
No, I was saying Vijayji had made a very interesting observation between the buffer states and the duffer states. Like so, in the entire globalization, the Western powers have imposed their will on others. It's same back to the psychological challenge of domination and control. That's what is being played. Thanks to technology, we are getting to know of all these things, and I will definitely look your speech up. The question again that arises, आपने index की बात की थी about the Human Development Index. Last week we had a conversation here that on many indexes that the West create, we are measured against that index. I'm saying India as a country must reject the Western indexes and establish our own. My question to you, sir, is that why do we not? What prevents us from doing that? So, we know this. For example, there was a news today that Russia has demanded Alaska back because the terms and conditions of selling the Alaska thing has been violated. Nobody knows about it. The Western media controls what we have to know. So the storylines are very important, and we have to create our own thing. So I would want you to tell us more about the issues that are the part of the global domination. That's very important here because it's all about domination and control. And there is another interesting saying that it has always been the alliance of democracies versus the axis of authoritarianisms or autocracies. That is happening. So it is, you can see Biden going to Saudi Arabia, pariah nation, he wanted to deal with him. So we are understanding that now. Where do we go from here?
So it's a very, very interesting point which you have raised. Let me tell you how the dynamics happen, and this I've elaborated in my video. Okay, how the whole dynamics works. See, my way of looking at is there is a narration which is set out in somewhere. There is a dark room, or I'll say war room, or war zone, or whatever you call it. There is a narration which is created. Okay, how for the next 10 to 15 years we have to continue to dominate. And there are various options which are evaluated, whether it is militarily, whether it is social dimensions, whether it's environmental dimensions, because all are well planned, highly lubricated economy. We have to look at very, very nicely in this game. Then what happens? Because I have witnessed them very closely and interacted with many of the key people in various international forums. I'm telling you, this nothing like suddenly it happens. No, it is all well-oiled game plan. Now, suppose America wants to push a narrative of climate change, and suddenly you want to say that solar energy is bad for environment. Let's take a hypothetical scenario. Suddenly you realize Because you go to internet and what you will find, very interesting thing. Solar wind power is bad because it disturbs the bird's migration route. This is another NGO which is working on wind power. Nuclear power anyway banned. Hydropower again banned. Coal power is banned. Solar energy is also, you go and see some of the sites. Solar energy is also bad. So what is left now? Fuel, fossil fuel anyway bad. So coal bad, fossil fuel bad, wind power bad, nuclear bad, solar bad, everything, hydropower is bad. All 6 options are bad. Then how you will run the economy? We have to think seriously. Who is funding what? If everything is so bad, I always say that all these 6 NGOs you put together in a room, okay, now you come out with an energy plan for the world. Because you are saying this is bad, the other one is saying that is bad, and we have to churn out the industrial production, GDP, employment, everything. You all sit together in a room and come out with this should be the template for the world we will follow. You will never come to a conclusion, except the fact. Why? Because in every agenda, there is a sponsoring agency. There is an agency which says this year flavor of the month is we have to target maybe water consumption, or suddenly you will find a new term, methane production, greenhouse gases, some interesting hi-fi English jargon with some prefix and suffix will emerge. That will happen. What will happen then? There will be a seminar, because see, everything involves money. Please understand this game. Your argument why India is not able to create index, I'll tell you very clearly. Tomorrow I am going to attend a conference of World Food Index, and there is a meeting and launch of the report in Delhi. What I'm trying to say is that, so you have decided I have to now hit at methane production in India, because we have one side paddy production and second side is animal. Both are known for methane. If we discourage methane production and link it to dairy and link it to paddy cultivation, there will be some NGOs in India, they are looking for fund and they will continue to make noise. So there is a funding which is coming from in the name of philanthropies. There are funding which are behind the scene. Suppose there is a USAID development. You will organize few seminars in India why milk production is bad, why India should reduce the population of cows, why India should reduce the paddy production. Agenda is that even if India reduces 10% of paddy production, India's competitiveness or surplus for the world market will reduce by 10% or at least 20%. It means for other countries, it will open up the markets. Nothing is free here in this world. Everything is a game plan. So how to keep India away from the market? Start criticizing India's practices. And then you start educating India's buyers of paddy or basmati or milk or other products. You are buying your crop from a polluting country. It is bad for climate change. Now, what is interesting, sir? I give you another live example. India is the largest importer of palm because we have shortage of palm oil. Indonesia, Malaysia is selling palm. Now, India is blamed because India is buying palm. That is why Malaysia and Indonesia is growing palm oil. Hence, they are culprit because they are uprooting the trees. But India is responsible because you are buying. It means India should stop buying palm. Very good narration, isn't it? It looks very logical. Point is that edible oil is an essential ingredient in Indian kitchen. So if you will stop buying palm, then what you will buy? You will buy soybean oil. Who is the seller? America, Brazil, Argentina. So point is that how to kill the market and how to defame the competition so that you open up your market. These all are tricks. Now you will find suddenly 20 NGOs working in India. Stop palm. There will be articles. There will be NGOs articles. There will be consumer activist article. Palm is bad. Few doctors will write that palm is bad for health. Palm is this bad. Suddenly, after reading 20 articles as a consumer, you will start behaving as if you are one of the worst person in the world consuming palm oil and destroying the world. You are actually responsible as a consumer for the problems of the world, without understanding that it is a business game plan and you are in the trap of that communication activity. And majority of consumers will don't go into detail, don't have capability to decipher these jargons and analysis. As I said, that lot of articles against palm, not a single article against olive oil, which is almost 8 times more polluting. So point here, fact of the matter is that what your point coming back to with this background, sir, India can create an index, but the problem is, where is the money to communicate to the wider world? Okay, this is the right index and this is the comparison. Minute I go to any of Sanjay ji's friend, those who are in bureaucracy or the political leadership, they say, we don't have money, why to waste on all these things? They don't realize this is a part of a bigger strategy. So what we have to understand is we need people, we need think tanks, those who understand. These are what you say, no? One is the front end diplomacy, then there is a track two diplomacy. Similarly, these are also tools of the trade to encourage and discourage your commercial interest in the name of NGOs, in the name of climate change. I'm not saying climate change is a hoax. It is a reality. But fact of the matter is, who is responsible? Who is creating this problem? Those villains are behind the scene. Actually, those villains are sponsoring these NGOs. You go and make noise that India is responsible or Brazil is responsible or Indonesia is responsible. We are not responsible. And the NGOs are very, very honest in their approach. They only speak his master's voice. Whoever give them sponsorship, they will narrate the same story repeatedly because they are paid to make that noise. Do we have that money to create a noise as a counter narrative? If we don't have money to do that, then we will continue with the narrative which is projected by the sponsors.
That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. The question arises again on the exact topic of globalization issue. The trade is one part, which is everybody wants to increase their products trade, and the buffers are created and duffers fall for it too. I will borrow your statement very frequently. So we are, from your statement, it would seem that we Indians are duffers. We are falling into the trap. We don't build our own narrative. But there is another question which is very important, which is related to globalization part of it, which has happened due to Ukraine scenario. That, here I have been telling Americans who say that your country is encouraging Russia by buying its oil. And my answer to them is very simple. Is that, well, it's a classic market opportunity. And if we are getting Russian oil at a lower price, why shouldn't we protect our own industries and our own way of life? Having said that, de-dollarization has become a new tool, emerging tool now. De-dollarization. Do you think that de-dollarization, which is happening now and which must happen, rupee is accepted in many places now, will be the real realignment in globalization?
Sir, this is a very important issue. Let me, before I move to this answer, let me add up some statistics for benefit of your members and to the viewers. I was just looking into the data. European Union's energy dependency.
Yes.
Okay. Crude oil import dependency of Europe is almost 27% on Russia.
Yes.
Okay. 9% on Iraq. 8% on Nigeria. 8% on Saudi Arabia. Like this. Coal import. We all talk about coal is bad for environment. Europe depends almost 47% of coal import from Russia. And then almost 18% from US. It's not that they have stopped using coal or polluting economy. Natural gas. Europe depends on Russia almost 41% for their energy requirement. My point here comes up is when you are talking of Russian narrative on the Ukraine crisis, is it possible for Europe to shift away from almost 50% dependency on energy across the platform, gas, crude, and coal on Russia? Can they abandon everything because the next best option is far below and very far? It is not economically sensible. My forecasting is, and I wish I'm wrong, Europe is heading for disaster. Because of sheer energy crisis, the more they will create problem for Russia, more they will create problem for themselves. That is one. Second, if that happens, the whole crisis of dollarization, which you are talking of, globalization and dollar economy, sir, the whole concept of WTO was go with competitive advantage so that best player gets the market share. Here, Russia, in the case of Europe, is best supplier for crude, best supplier for coal, and best supplier for natural gas to Europe. Ideally, this is what is happening before Ukraine. That was the true globalization between Europe and Russia. Now, by putting economic restrictions and embargoes on Russia, are you favoring globalization? Number one. It means you are forcing other countries also to abandon the concept of globalization and follow what we are saying. So globalization is moving away and entering into politicalization of globe. It means if I followed globalization from last 20 years and increased or developed my supply chain to countries which are most efficient, suddenly because somebody is putting a restriction on dollar trade and swift account closing and other things and forcing me to move away from the most efficient to inefficient suppliers, is it globalization? Number one. Are you helping climate change? Because I always say one thing very simple to the Western world and the dominant of the so-called advocacy of the globalization and climate change. The shortest route of international flight is always expensive than the longer route. So if I generate less pollution in air travel, I have to pay more. If I take a longer route flight, it is cheaper. So is this economic model is logical? One side you are saying reduce the carbon footprint in air travel, but I will charge more. What is the logic? Just because it is a convenience. So convenience overtakes then the logic of climate change and pollution. Ultimately, it is a commercial interest which overtakes, not the climatic reasons, not the pollution, not the carbon footprint. So this is another agenda which is camouflaging the logic behind everything. Number one. Number two, what Russia has given the world a very interesting thing. And I was doing this analysis when the currency devaluation was taking place around the world. We have seen there is a massive reduction in currency. Russia gave a very interesting thing that before, I will say that Ukraine crisis, the Russian dollar, Russian
Ruble. Ruble.
ruble vis-à-vis dollar was something about 57. After sanction, it went up to all the way to 138. Now it has come down to almost 52 or 56. What this indicates, and this happened when Russia said, I will give you material provided you pay me in ruble. Nobody ever thought this can happen. And tomorrow, if every country says that I have a surplus, for example, people are asking India to supply wheat. Okay, I'll give you wheat, pay me in rupee. I'll give you milk, pay me in rupee. I'll give you something, whatever you want, pay me in rupee. If every country starts doing that, it will be a fascinating world. And what will happen? If this is the way, I will not be surprised. Tomorrow, people will go back to ancient civilization and we start doing barter trade. That, okay, you give me oil, I'll give you wheat. And the remaining, we will settle in some local currency or a currency which is, I have surplus and you need it. So dollarization of the economy will be history. May not be soon, because we don't have any power. Otherwise, if I look at the BRICS countries, suppose, and this because I was part of the BRICS forums and for the last 9 years in various committees on agriculture and others. Imagine if BRIC countries tomorrow, Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa decides that within us we will create a new currency. It is almost 40% of the trade. It is almost, I will say that 50% or 40% of the world population. And we have all the raw material inside. Point here comes up is, if we are not logical, I will not be surprised that countries will start creating as part of the free trade agreement a clause on currency. That why, if I'm doing a free trade agreement between India and UK, why I should deal in dollar? If I'm doing a free trade agreement between Europe and India, why I should deal in dollar? If China is negotiating ASEAN free trade treaty with 10 countries of ASEAN, why we should deal in dollar? So it's very likelihood that countries will come out with creativity, and I think government of India is doing it sensibly, that if you are giving a line of credit to Sri Lanka, accept rupee. We will give it to Nepal, accept rupee. Bhutan, accept Indian rupee. Bangladesh, accept Indian rupee. At least we have captured South Asia, which is almost something about 2 billion population. So what I'm trying to say here is that out of 8, if 2 billion population, 25% of the world is handling rupee, why I need dollar? And then similarly, if China and ASEAN countries, which is almost 30 or 35% of the world trade, which is happening in that dimension, if they create their own ASEAN currency, what will happen to dollar? So what I'm trying to say is that world is learning from many experiences. Russia, Ukraine is one example. Globalization is unreliable. You cannot depend on globalization agenda because of distortion in supply chain. We have seen because of Ukraine, either war and then economic sanctions. I will not be surprised. Wait for another 2-3 months. There's a new front which will open is South China Sea. How it is going to unfold will be much more damaging because all the trade routes are from there. So one has to look at lot of things are likely to unfold. So year 2023, 22 and 23 will see a new world order, including currency dimensions.
A new world order. That's really interesting. Uh, and just for my consumption, what happens if, as you said, that okay, if countries create their own currency blocks, then this globalization is dead. And what happens if by 2030 this entire oil dependency goes down and countries start asking that we will buy only in our currency, or as you said that we can create free trade blocks and deal in each other's currency? How will that scenario unfold?
Sir, what you are saying is not very far. I am very clear from the day one of WTO. Show me one country. We are talking of world trade. Trade means there has to be somebody buyer and there has to be somebody who is selling it. Show me one country in the world which says our government plan and investment is not to increase the productivity and production. Show me one country. It means the global market is actually shrinking, not expanding. Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance in China. America is talking of self-reliance. Europe is talking of self-reliance. Africa is investing in technology and development. What is the whole approach of development in the world? That create more factories, improve technology, increase the productivity. That is the whole thing of development. So when everybody is improving production and productivity, so market is shrinking or increasing. One has to think that way. So actually the commodity markets are shrinking, which is almost 40-50% of the world trade. That's one aspect. Second, which is important for us to look at it, the technology transfer, which is not in shiploads, it can be via internet. I can give you a technology, I can give you a formula, I can give you a process, or I can fly down and create a process in your factory. You pay for my intellectual property and I will hand it over to you. That is where the trade will move. So research and innovation is the dimension where the trade will move. That is one. Another interesting dimension we have to look at is that if around the world trade is shrinking, the conflicts will increase. And that is precisely what is happening in WTO ministerial meetings. Why there is no consensus? Why India is saying we will not accept, world is saying, and says, okay, let's give concession, talk for 2 more years. We will not listen to your food security nonsense, because for me as a India, my poverty and my farmers are more important to address them instead of following the trap of WTO and whatever definition you created in 1994 or 84. We don't care. The word says okay. Now, are you saying these conflicts will reduce? No, these conflicts will increase. Number one. Number two, the most important aspect you said is energy crisis or energy, alternate energies. We created, I always say that, world needs a excess of global diplomacy. So far in last 50 years, the crude was excess of global diplomacy or global relations. Who can give me crude? Who can give me energy? I'm very sure in next 15 years, you remember, sir, we mentioned in our Qatar episode that after 15 years, the way alternate technologies are evolving, I don't see a future for crude, unless in a very limited area, and hopefully there will be other options as well. What will happen? Then world will need an alternate axis of global diplomacy. It has to revolve around something else. It cannot happen. So everybody will sit at home and relax. I don't need to go anywhere because I'm self-sufficient, and everybody says I'm self-sufficient. Why I should talk to America? Why I should talk to China? So there is going to be something else. We are human beings. We will not be satisfied with satisfaction. So we will be having something else. Whether it is going to be water, whether it is going to be like COVID, we are talking about vaccines, whether it is going to be something else more vital, because crude was vital. It was an essential ingredient of development. If that is, there is an alternate to that essential ingredient for development, then what is going to be the next element around which the world will revolve? This will be very interesting in next 10 to 15 years. So what we have to look at is, that's what I'm saying, there's going to be a new world order. There will be a new axis around which the world will happen. And my concern and my hope is that in all this crisis, I can see a bright spot for India. India will emerge stronger for two simple reasons. One, we have a huge domestic market. Number two, India is still highly underdeveloped compared to many of the developed and saturated market. So we will have another 50 years to grow. And number three, we are highly adaptable because our cultural systems, our value systems are very different, starting from vegetarian to whatever dimension you look at it. And fourth dimension is our one of the most diversified agroclimatic conditions in the world. Another country where we have to have a very close relation to meet the deficiencies is Russia, because Russia has the largest landmass in the world as a nation, and they have all the possible raw material or natural resources which India may need. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm looking into an entirely different world down the line 15 years. Many will try to resist it because it is not going to satisfy their current diplomatic and economic interest. But I am seeing something very different. And what you raised a very fundamental issue, that minute India becomes independent or little less dependent on imported crude, and we have surplus cash flow by saving from imported crude, India will have a very different growth path, and world will come back to India. And today, after all the crisis of Ukraine and everywhere, and I'm being a working very closely with the financial markets. I'm also advisor to SEBI. My reading is there is no better place to do investments other than India. We have a huge population, unsaturated market, huge opportunities. We have intellectual capabilities, infrastructure is building, connectivity is improving, PLI scheme. Our government thankfully started realizing that economic power will bring global power to India. So political leadership is becoming sensible to focus on more on economy and less on politics, because more you focus on economics, your global stature will go up. So all these are factors which are in positive towards India. The only problem is our so-called sometimes irresponsible politics. We try to derail the speed of growth, and then we have some law and order challenges because of some fictitious sponsored agitations, protests to delay the growth of India.
Let's end on that bright note and go to the questions. AK, sir, recently some MNCs left India. Is it a cause for concern? Why are we not able to improve on ease of doing business and make it worthwhile for them?
I don't think so, because companies, those who are leaving India, if you look into, I was today reading, I don't have that paper right now, otherwise I can tell you, all the major brands have left China, whether it is Uber, whether it is Amazon, whether it is, you name it. Google is not there in China. So what is happening to China? Nothing. They have created their own economy. Multinationals, those who are leaving India, and I tell you, I used to work with multinationals. Very often, multinationals misread India. Why I'm saying this? India is a fantastic market. Indian consumers are not blind. Why I'm saying this? I met many CEOs of multinationals in various forums. You know what they say? Indian consumers don't understand quality. I said, what do you mean by that? No, when we offer our product, they say it is expensive. Obviously, because your product, which is marginally better, and you are charging 4 times the price. Is this logical? Indian consumers are value conscious. They understand how much to pay for what. And most of the MNCs came with the project reports which were given to them by so-called equally crazy consultants of their own countries of origin, and giving them a glorify India is this, go and invest, because consultant was getting fees to create those fictitious reports. I'll give you a live example. I will not name the company. They gave a report and it was on food processing. And just reflect back, I'm talking of 20 years ago. One of the most leading consulting company. They were making presentation in many cities of India. When per capita income goes up, animal protein, that is meat intake, goes up. Are you saying that when people become rich, they change their religion? Or they from vegetarian, they become non-vegetarian? The richest people of India, Gujaratis and Marwadis, are purely vegetarian. What are you talking? Just because in America or in Western world, people cannot afford meat, so when they get a more income, they go for a meat eating instead of corn or low end of food items. I understand, but this logic does not make sense, because some of the richest communities of India, Jains are some of the richest. They are purely vegetarian. Gujaratis purely vegetarians. Marwadis purely vegetarians, and all of these three communities are on the topmost per capita income in the country. So where is the logic? They say no, but this is a global experience. It means the local civilization, local value system has no meaning in market. This is some types of fictitious, extrapolation of intellectual capability which does not exist, is given to these multinationals. When they come and invest, they fail in their business plan. Now they cannot say we screwed up our business. What they say, India is not good for economy, policies are not good, that's why I'm going back. So they blame back to Indian government. And when I interacted with them in many forums, can you tell me which law, which line is bad? I will request government of India, they will change. You tell me which clause of which law is bad, which is hurting you. No answer. So it's a very motherhood statement. Environment is bad, policy is bad, it's not good for environment. Hence, we are winding up. The fact of the matter is they failed in their business plan. They had no product by which they can attract Indian customers. Indian customers are sensible and they rejected them. That's why they're winding up. So don't worry.
That's why Netflix can't have its way here because they don't understand the Indian mind.
JK is asking, Indians don't have the mental capacity nor the attitude or nature to become superpower, which China has. The least we can do is to at least try to rise above the third world shithole. Thoughts?
I think, Mr. JK, I don't know what's your background and what in which part of the world you are living in. See, you have to appreciate one thing. India is coming out from a lot of challenges, and we are building this nation. China, I can tell you n number of stories of China where overnight, China, you go to China and say, I want to set up a factory. They say you choose the land, and you say, I want to have a patch next to the river so that I can ship my consignment via waterways. They will say, okay, take the land after 3 weeks. What they will do? They will uproot the village, throw them somewhere else, and they give the portion of land to you. You develop, no problem. You run the factory. Can you do in India? Can you do in Indian democracy? So point here comes up is what you are comparing in what context. It's not the issue of mental capacity. If you talk about India's mental capacity, historically, go back 5,000 years, what was India's capability? India was, even in foreseeable history, which is documented history by British travelers and European travelers and Chinese travelers, India was having 30% global GDP. If India had no mental capability, why around the world people came and invaded India? If India was so poor and so backward, why people came and invaded India, including Europeans, Afghans, Chinese, whole lot of people in different routes? Because India was prosperous and developed. People looted us. Our food was popular. Our textile was popular. Our, architect was popular. Are you saying this Taj Mahal, our design came from all the way from Mongols? Show me one structure like Taj Mahal in Mongols. Show us one fort which is there in India created by Muslims in any Muslim country. So what are you talking? We had and we have managerial and mental capability. Only thing is we are short of resources because our resources were looted. Now we are rebuilding. Come back and see the roads of India today. It takes time. We are hopeful. We are positive. We are not discouraged. We know it will take another 20 years or so and we'll go back to our glory. We are hopeful. I don't know why you are upset.
Next. QWERTY. One of my Chinese friends, while I was talking to him, called India a dumpster fire. Too much population, pollution, no value of human life, increasing inequality, and big Islamic population. There is no hope for India. You take it to Vijayji.
Vibhuti Jha, I think.
नहीं नहीं वो
No,
योर टेक एचबीजी एंड
My,
वीएचपी
okay.
बट आप है
My,
वक्ता प्रवक्ता
okay. My way of uh, my way of looking at it. See, I've been to China many times, no doubt. I must admire. Chinese is an old civilization. They have developed fantastic work, good infrastructure. They invested a lot. Again, I'm saying because they were good planners, they knew what they have to do. Unfortunately, in last 70 years, we wasted our political leadership wasted time in doing petty politics, vote bank politics. Instead of focusing on development of India, we wasted in our saving our own shares. That is what the problem is. But China was very focused. They had a vision, they have a clarity, and it was not a democracy. So no challenges. There was a continuity because it is a communist party, one after another. They had a communist party plan, and others were just following the blueprint. And it helps. China created large number of institutions which gave continuity to their development process. I agree with that. I'm not discounting China's effort. I've been to many times to China, and I must admire the way they have created themselves. I'm not going into human life and human rights and other things because those who are political agenda. But if you look from economic point of view, it worked for them. Other things, the world is criticizing them. That is separate. As far as India is concerned, as I said, in a democracy, when our political leadership is fighting for their own survival, own chair, own power, it is bound to create inequality. Because divide and rule policy, many of the Indian politicians in early stages of independent India adopted from British ideology. They found that if it can serve Britishers, we can continue and save our chairs also. And that was the reason that India's many places you will find inequality and other challenges. But again, I'm saying, I'm not discouraged. I'm very hopeful because youth of India, the technology, the social media, the exposure of India around the world, and connectivity with many other people, things are no more same. Today, politicians cannot fool around and say what I'm saying is right and wrong. Everybody is questioned today. So potential of India will emerge. And let me tell you, social media is one of the biggest catalyst in that. And that will discipline the things. It is fantastic to look at it. I always say that two things have happened good for India. One is WTO and second is internet. WTO told us how to play and create rules to protect your commercial interest. It is not good for us, but we can learn a lot from WTO and other countries how to create rules and regulations to control and improve your commercial interest. Learn from the mistakes of others and adopt what is good for your commercial interest and economic interest. On the other side, internet, because today nobody can fool around. You do one mistake. Think of what was happening. Have you ever thought of a Supreme Court judge will make a statement and country will be up in arms? Have you ever think today Supreme Court judges, the president, the prime minister, the parliament, the politicians, the newsletter, even editors of newspaper, anyone who goes crosses the Lakshman Rekha, and then you will see the reaction of the society. And that will discipline India and the growth of India. I'm very positive and I'm very hopeful that India's energy will emerge now.
Yes, I think the Nupur Sharma case is the best example. How the same set of judges changed within 2 weeks.
Yeah. Dr. Ashish Dixit पूछ रहे हैं, India needs high energy resources now to develop and growth. Isn't it right time to as world to get India more uranium enrichment program?
It's true. As I said, that see, energy is a driver. And India has uranium capability. It's not that we don't have. In fact, I'm handling one of the radioactive facility, and we have one of the fantastic and one of the most efficient and the most cost effective radioactive capabilities in the world. So it's not that we don't have. Only thing is, as I mentioned, we need resources. India is working on it. We are working in overall plan. You have seen how we are spreading our wings in solar. We have seen how the things are spreading in hydro. We have the coal resources, but we don't want to sanction more projects because of climatic change issue. That's our concern. We have wind power energy. Nuclear is with us. Tidal power, other options, all are on table. And I'm sure what you are suggesting is European enrichment program. India has well developed, well controlled, and one of the most cost effective program in the world. Yes, being resource constraint in certain areas, we have to look at it. Plus, India's population density is so high. Because of population, we have to also look at these locations which are little away from the high density population from a safety point of view. So considering all this, so I'm fully agree that there is a need to have a different portfolio of energy, and I'm sure we will go ahead and our bioenergy and alternate sources, things will improve, and nuclear option will always remain on the table.
Next.
Indian is asking how much drag does Indian public sector company, PSUs, banks, oil marketing companies cause on the Indian economy? Is this the reason for high inflation? Is he referring to the inefficiencies and the return on capital issues?
Important question. Let me tell you that yes, Indian PSUs were highly inefficient. Now things are changing for two reasons. One, all old sick PSUs with huge resource base. They had huge tracts of land, lot of key, real estate properties. Government of India has taken a conscious view either to lease out, rent it out, give it to private, or forcing the PSUs to enter into joint ventures or PSUs with foreign investor fundings like G2G arrangements. That is going on. Many of the oil marketing companies are today becoming efficient. The reason, or I will say PSUs are becoming efficient, the reason is very simple. They are also following the same digital. Many of them are listed companies. Every quarterly, they are reviewed in the stock exchanges. Their management is ruthlessly evaluated like any private companies. Things are improving. But yes, we had a legacy factor where people employed unnecessary because of political reasons and lollipops that every minister wanted a PSU in his territory, in his constituency, irrespective of the justification, just because he wanted to show that he has developed his area so that next time he gets a vote. I think those days are over. Things are changing. Two, three PSUs, which are really becoming, I will say that issue, which government of India is looking into change in business leadership of that. Number one, if you look into BSNL, the technology change, BSNL has to relook into because in a high changing technology area, they don't have capability to invest that much. Number one, Indian post offices. I wrote one piece, it is on my blog, Vijay Sardana online, you can go and check it. I said if three organizations, Indian Railways, Indian Post and BSNL, if you look into these three and if they three work together and they have a complementarity into three of them, these will be the world's largest corporation. The number of outreach they have, the post offices we have, the telecom towers BSNL and the reach BSNL had, and the Indian Railways. If we club these three together in a very synchronized manner, it will be a big backbone for India's economy and it can become one of the largest corporations in the world because of their reach, assets, and the infrastructure they have.
Next. Uh, PCCHF, thank you. Ame Nam Joshi Vibhuti Ji. Fox peddles Americans want DeSantis, not Trump. How much is his popularity? Trump was against Go Green Gang as they are harmful to USA too. Has cackling Kamala improved or she is still lost in passage of time, finding children of community? Now, I know you are a Republican, so you might like to
No,
issue a disclaimer and then answer.
yeah, I'm a Republican contesting for the New York State Assembly seat, so your comment is very welcome. I like it. But I also applaud you for being so observant of things in the US, as you are saying. Look, 2024 is still far away, and I think one of the good thinkers of Republican Party, Newt Gingrich, gave a very sound advice to Trump: stay out of the 2022 election. This is the worst ever run that America is having, the worst ever presidency America is having, and the vice presidency America is having. And it is a ruined economy right now. Let this go past. Then we talk about the 2024. And I think I agree with Newt Gingrich in this matter. You don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So 2022 is looking good. Congress and Senate may both be with the Republicans. And if that happens, I think presidency will come Republican way. Whether it's Trump comes back or DeSantis is a separate issue altogether right now.
Next.
Ameya, every day in 2022 and previous years, there have been 3 to 4 mass shootings in USA based on ethnicity and race. We should release a report that it's failing state as a society and people should be careful entering that country. I think it doesn't purport to our discussion today. So, that I think we will defer this question.
You can give a one-liner.
Okay, one liner I would say that mass shootings are happening. We must write a report. I totally agree with that. India must comment on the domestic matters of America just as AOC and Ilhan do that all the time. We must begin to ask question, exercise our freedom of speech.
Okay, next.
Robert.
Robert Cool, Namaste. EU to soften sanctions on Russian banks to allow food trade. खाने को अन्न नहीं, जलाने को ईंधन नहीं, ये धूर्त पहले रूस को हड़काए फिर सूखा चाटे.
This is true. See, my way of looking at it, as I was mentioning to you, is almost 40 to 50% energy security depends on Russia. And it is just, I will say that very illogical that you encouraged Ukraine to go for a war. It is totally ruined. In fact, I was talking to some diplomats of European Union that you have misled by any reason, by any stretch of imagination, taking Russia head on by Ukraine, and you know it that it is a missile word. You don't have to send foot soldiers. And another mistake which they are doing is sending and deploying the new multi-barrel rockets, which can hit deep inside or behind the front lines of Russia. What Russia has to do, they have to fire another 2,000 missiles, and rest of the Ukraine will be ruined. Is this the way you want to control this disaster? And it will create more problem for Ukraine. I think somewhere, instead of logic, the whole Europe is fighting on ego. And when I'm asking this, okay, why you are doing it, they say it is a sovereign right of Ukraine. Then why the friends are there for? You can't give them a sense that you are heading for a disaster. So I think somewhere we have to understand that it is a game plan which is going to benefit America. Ukraine is ruined. Next target is going to be a big economic problems in Europe. And unfortunately, if South China Sea opens up, it will create more problems. So this is going to be a disaster and testing time for Europe. America has nothing to lose in the name of giving support of 40 billion or whatever to Europe. It is only pumping their war machinery and defense industry. They're not going to give them what is the population of Ukraine? They can simply send a food to them, nothing else, because there's nothing left there now. So my way of looking at it is, I think this is a disastrous decision. They have to come back to senses, get out of their egos. They have to understand that more they carry on with this, more disaster will happen. And most of the people will migrate back to Europe. Maybe Europe will get some population to work in their factories, but it is not going to solve their economic crisis.
In fact, Europe is more and more looking like a colony of the America.
It was always. See, point here comes, even if you look into WTO, even if you look into UN forums, international forums, see, all look at, and that's what I'm saying, the more crisis in Europe, it will extend it to America, because imagine if today inflation is 40 years high in Europe, they don't have the money to buy American goods. What American companies will do? American companies will wind up and go away from Europe because there's nothing to purchase there. So point here comes up is in a high cost lifestyle. I think this is something which they have to, their political leadership has to think logically. Otherwise, I don't see any reason who is advising them and why. They may say it is a human right and dignity and all those slogans.
We know all this human right and religious freedom. These are all weapons.
All these things, I think, makes no sense. They all will be heading for economic crisis.
Next.
Tapas Biswas. Is government gonna meet Pakistan in Tashkent end of this month? Did we forget Pulwama? You say 15 years crude dependency. Gadkari says 5 years. What's the difference?
See, I'm as far Tashkent is concerned.
Yeah, Tashkent वाला छोड़ दीजिए, बस ये 15-5 का.
See, I'm saying Gadkari ji is saying 5 years. I'm saying 15 years because 5 years he may be talking about e-mobility. But when I'm talking of national energy security, 5 years is too early because a lot of other challenges and infrastructure and requirements are there. We have to do a lot of
Yeah.
internal investments and replanning. 5 years can be only for electrical mobility, but for rest of the things, we still need time. Because the amount of investment which is required, we will not be able to generate in 5 years. We need more time for that.
Yes, energy is required for so many other things.
Right.
In factories and in
True.
a lot of other sectors, the energy is required. Next, Hetal Thakkar, thank you. Jai Bharat, Jai Punjab. Is paddy bad for Punjab groundwater? Scientist. This is exactly your type of question.
Yes. See, because of free power, let me tell you that initially, before the free power policy started, Punjab had something about 18,000 tube wells. Today, Punjab has more than 2 lakh tube wells. Average subsidy per tube well is 50,000 rupees per year. And the outcome is every month, water table of Punjab is going down by 1 feet. It's unsustainable by any standards. Next to Satluj, I worked very closely with Punjab farmers. Next to Satluj, the soil is like a desert. Go and look at the PAU's own seed farms which they leased out to Airtel. The soil was so bad, which is next to Satluj River, maybe 200 meters away, and there was no nutrition in the soil. It was virtually becoming, unfertile. So, what my concern is that Punjab, because of their greed of free power and FCI, heading for disaster. They must get out of this greed if they want better future for their next generation.
Achintyanath Saxena. In India, meat eaters will grow if restrictions on sale of meat and eating meat are lifted by government, like Meiji Japan did 150 years ago.
This is one of the hypotheses, but what I'm finding is the new trend that youth is moving away from meat. I'm also advisor to Poultry Federation of India. Let me tell you, there's no restriction in selling. The fact of the matter is the consumption is stagnant. And that's why today the cost of production and the selling price of chicken in India, farmers are losing money because they are not even able to recover the cost of production. And in India is a highly cyclical and seasonal because please appreciate India is highly religious society. So every week or every alternate day, there are some messages that today is Tuesday, today is Saturday, today is Sankrant, today is this, today that. So that is one message. Second, you go and talk to college students. Vegan culture is becoming a you know new trend in amongst India's youth. My daughter, she was very fond of chicken. Now she avoids chicken. Point here comes up is that it's not that simply just because of restriction. Please appreciate that like any other information, people are also getting messages that meat is bad for environment, climate change, be vegetarian, why killing people, like human rights. Today there is a big debate going on into animal rights, welfare of animals, and so forth. So it's no more the same thing that you have money, so you'll go for meat. I think people are becoming very different because of their education level, because of their awareness level, and other peer pressures.
Right.
Next, Niladri Chakrabarti. Is it true that they cannot? It is true that they cannot attract Indian customers, but who is losing and what is the use of huge population? Purchasing power is very low in India. I think it was already covered by Vijay ji in his address. So I think I'll pass this. Next, Mohit Kumbhojkar. While Islamic nations use provisions in a democracy to subvert it, how can we focus on the economy by being democratic? Can the Islamophobia bill by Ilhan Omar and such insidious things be dealt with through democracy, or would need a Chinese type of system to deal with external interruptions? I think it's more a question for Vibhuti Ji.
Yes, they do. I mean, when people are taking advantage of your system, that's the important part to address that issue. Look at Islamophobia, I mean, Ilhan Omar is directly hitting at India, and there are many people in this country right now, for reasons that we talked about, that India is standing up, is they are trying to subvert India, teach India a lesson, so to say. And there are many NGOs working on that. Do we need a new system? It's an open question that the country will have to decide. Do we need definite measures to deal with that scenario? Otherwise, you know about Zubair and Nupur Sharma. Supreme Court talks X, talks Y, and they talk about social justice. So there is a need for, definitely there is a need for something new to emerge out of how to deal with this social dissent in the name of freedom of speech and whatever, because that is a very critical issue for India to handle. As a, you know, if you look at the strategic part of it, conversation, political risk in India is the biggest risk for its economic achievements, and the local satraps deal with it in a different way. Vijay referred to that the political uncertainty that comes through, that needs to be handled, and the people of India will have to respond to this. What do you want it? That's what is important. Yeah.
Okay, next. Harmonium Bhajan. Dharmanch. Thank you. Thank you. The Lone Explorer. Thank you. And the last one. Tejas, sir, what is the status of oil exploration in India? Is the Modi government working on oil exploration in India? Vijay
See, we have different pockets of oil exploration, whether it is in Bombay High or in Western Ghats, which was given it to Reliance, and then there's some uh, parts of Assam, Dibrugarh, and that belt.
Of
See,
course,
overall,
Rajasthan.
and some part of Rajasthan, and a very heavy crude, we got it from there in Barmer area. See, point here comes up is that everything depends upon the cost of exploration. We can do a lot of exploration, but in economy today, the whole thing becomes a cost of exploration, and it is appearing that wherever it is possible, ONGC is working hard on it. Other oil companies, even private oil companies, have started working on that. So wherever it makes economic sense, I'm sure we should only go for that. Just because to become self-sufficiency at a higher cost than an imported one, I think will not make any economic sense. So my way of looking at is today it is better to have a long-term arrangements with Middle East, because cost of exploration or oil, if I say Saudi Arabia is one of the lowest, if you go and look at Iran, it's another lowest. Venezuela is very low. Other places there are low. So instead of wasting money in doing in-house, it makes sense also sometimes to explore. I mean, import from outside. So it has to be based on pure economic sense, not emotions. So make and buy decision, either we do in-house or we buy, has to be based on economic considerations. And I'm sure we have enough competent people in policy making to take care of that.
Okay, with that, we come to the end of the session. And thank you so much, Vijayji. You explained so many things so patiently and so beautifully. Vibhuti thanks as always.
Welcome.
Thanks to all viewers. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram.